Welcome, everyone. Ready to deep dive with us today?
Always.
All right, we're tackling Jonathan Edwards.
Oh, a fascinating one.
He's the sinners in the hands of an angry God guy, right?
You know him for that sermon, yeah.
But I have a feeling there's a whole lot more to him
Oh, absolutely.
than just fire and brimstone. So
We're going to uncover...
let's uncover the man behind the myth.
Yeah, to really understand Edwards,
Okay.
you got to go beyond the stereotypes.
Yeah.
Think about his life, his intellect, how he impacted American religious history.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
What was his upbringing like?
Well,
I mean, I read he was the only son with 10 sisters.
Imagine that household.
Oh, I know. Maybe all those sisters drove him to theology.
It's a picture, isn't it?
It really is.
And, you know, his family, they were all ministers.
Oh, that's right.
Prominent ministers.
Like a family business.
His grandfather was Solomon Stoddard.
Oh, yeah.
Led the church in Northampton, Massachusetts. Powerful figure. They called him Pope Stoddard.
Pope Stoddard, wow.
Yeah, quite a legacy to live up to.
So young Jonathan was destined for the pulpit, I guess?
You'd think, right?
From day one?
But he wasn't a one-dimensional guy.
Oh, okay.
Alongside all this religious influence, he loved science from a young age. There's this story about him as a boy writing about spiders, like a whole essay on spiders.
What? A spider essay?
Super detailed, yeah.
So he's like out there with a magnifying glass.
That's the image, yeah.
That's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, he was so curious about nature.
Yeah.
And this idea of observation, that connects to his theology later on.
Okay.
He thought true knowledge came from observing and reflecting.
So it's not just
books.
Yeah.
It's about engaging with the world.
I like that.
Yeah.
It makes him seem, I don't know, more down to earth somehow.
It does.
Like just some, you know.
Stuffy theologian.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuck in his study.
But this is also the guy who, like,
oh, yeah.
really went deep on spiritual questions.
He did.
What about his conversion?
Right. So early on,
Yeah.
Edwards really struggled with this idea of God's sovereignty.
Like God being in total control.
Yeah, having absolute control.
Yeah.
He couldn't square that with free will.
It's a tough one.
Until he was about 17.
Okay.
Reading 1 Timothy 1.17.
Yeah.
He had this powerful conversion experience.
So it wasn't just like a...
Not just a head thing.
Yeah.
He really felt it.
He felt it deeply.
Deeply, yeah. He talked about realizing God's glory.
Wow.
All his theological doubts gone. From that point on, he was all about personal experiential faith.
Not just the intellectual stuff.
Right, not just dry intellectualism.
Yeah.
It's got to be real, you know?
He really wanted to encounter God.
Yeah, that became central to his whole ministry.
So this emphasis on personal experience, I wonder,
Yeah.
was he reading John Locke at the time?
You were right on track there.
I know Edwards was influenced by him.
Huge influence. Reading Locke's essay concerning human understanding.
Yeah, that was big for Edwards.
Huge. Locke argued learning shouldn't just be intellectual.
Yeah.
It should involve the senses, too.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So Edwards took that to heart with his preaching.
I see where you're going with this.
He wanted preaching to move people's hearts.
But also, like...
But also enlighten their minds.
Okay, so it's not just about...
Not just winning arguments.
Right.
With fancy words.
He wants people to feel it.
He wanted them to feel the truth of the gospel.
Which makes sense if you think about the state of religion
Right.
in the colonies.
Things were getting a little
stale.
You could say that, yeah.
Like a bit lifeless.
There was this sense of decline.
Oh, I remember reading about the halfway covenant.
Yeah, a lot of churches adopted that.
Where people could be members without, like...
Without a deep personal commitment.
Yeah, just kind of going through the modes.
Exactly. It was like the church was losing its spark.
Okay, so the stage is set.
The stage is set.
For revival. Enter Jonathan Edwards.
There he is.
I mean, the Great Awakening, right?
Oh, yeah.
It sounds so intense, though.
It was.
Like, I've heard about these wild displays of faith.
Oh, yeah.
Like people fainting, crying out.
Yeah.
Even like shaking and trembling.
It was powerful.
It almost reminds me of, I don't know, some modern movements.
It's a fair comparison.
Yeah.
You know, like any passionate religious movement.
Yeah.
The Great Awakening had its moments of excess.
Okay, so maybe not all good.
But it's important to remember,
Yeah.
Edwards himself was actually cautious.
He was.
About emotional extremes.
Look.
He thought true conversion was more than just...
More than just a feeling.
Yeah, more than just fleeting feeling.
Okay.
It had to be rooted in something deeper.
So how does the sinners in the hands of an angry God sermon?
Oh, the famous one.
Yeah, how does that fit in? I mean,
it
makes me think of like...
Fire and brimstone.
Yeah, a preacher just yelling.
Scaring people.
Trying to scare people into being good.
It's the image we have, yeah.
Yeah.
But the reality was different.
Really?
Edwards was actually quite subdued when he preached.
Really?
He read from his manuscript.
Oh.
Quietly.
Interesting.
His goal wasn't to terrorize,
Okay.
but to wake people up.
To the reality.
Yeah, to the reality of their situation.
I see.
To shake them out of complacency and turn them towards God's grace.
It's amazing how a sermon can become so iconic.
I know.
But also so misunderstood.
Totally.
So do we have any accounts of how people reacted?
We do.
Like back then?
Yes, some were really moved.
Moved in a good way?
Not always just fear, no.
Okay.
Some accounts talk about joy, peace on people's faces
Okay.
after hearing the sermon.
Wow.
Others stayed behind to talk to him.
Really?
Yeah, seeking guidance.
It was more than just fear then.
It was
real.
a real seeking.
Yeah.
It reminds us, historical figures, they get reduced to these simple images
Yeah.
to really understand them.
You have to look deeper.
That's what makes Edwards so fascinating.
He's not just a one-dimensional fire and brimstone preacher.
Exactly.
He was a thinker.
Deep thinker.
Wrestling with big questions.
Yeah.
And that leads us to
A turning point.
that conflict he had with his congregation.
Yeah.
And ultimately got dismissed.
It was a big deal.
What caused that?
Well, it came down to his views on church membership.
Okay.
He became really firm about who should be a member.
Okay.
He thought it should only be for those who had a genuine conversion.
Not just
Not just anyone born into the church.
Right.
This was radical at the time.
Especially since his grandfather, Pope Stoddard.
Yeah, he was much more lenient.
So it was bold to go against that.
It was.
How did people react?
Not well. It sparked debates.
Yeah.
Tension in the church.
Yeah.
But Edwards stuck to his guns. Oh, yeah. He believed true faith meant transformation. He wasn't going to compromise on that.
Even if it meant
losing his position.
Wow.
Which he did.
That's why.
In 1750, they dismissed him.
He stood by his principles.
He did.
Even when it cost him.
That's Edwards.
It was a tough moment for him, I imagine.
Yeah, heartbreak and conviction.
But this isn't the end of his story.
Oh, no.
He keeps going.
In fact, this starts a whole new chapter.
Interesting.
Where he writes some of his most influential stuff.
Well,
we'll have to save that.
Okay.
For next time.
All right. I can't wait to hear more.
Me too.
Last time we were talking about Edwards getting dismissed.
From his church.
Yeah, tough break.
It was.
What I find amazing is that he didn't just give up.
Right.
He kept going.
He did.
He went to Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Worked with the Native Americans there.
As a missionary.
And that's when he wrote some of his biggest works.
It was a really fruitful period for him.
So even though he was
kind of in exile.
Yeah, exiled from his community.
His ideas were still spreading.
And these writings from Stockbridge.
Oh, they were major.
Not just side projects.
No, these are the works he's known for.
Like Freedom of the Will.
Yeah.
Original Sin.
Still debated by theologians today.
It's like
deep stuff.
Yeah, really diving into philosophy, theology.
He had a brilliant mind.
He did.
Always pushing the boundaries.
And then he gets appointed president of Princeton.
Yeah, 1757. What a turn of events.
The College of New Jersey back then.
Right, which became Princeton.
Like a recognition of his life's work.
And even while he was,
debating theology.
Yeah.
He was still ministering to people.
To the Native Americans.
That's right.
It makes me wonder, did that experience working with people from a different culture?
Yeah.
Did that shape his thinking?
I think so.
About conversion, about faith.
Edwards believed true faith wasn't just intellectual.
Okay.
It was about a changed heart.
A transformed life.
And working with the Native Americans who had their own traditions, their own beliefs.
Must have given him a new perspective.
On what it means to truly believe.
It's that emphasis on both head and heart again.
That seems to be a theme with him.
It does.
But sadly, his time at Princeton.
Yeah.
It was cut short.
Way too short.
He died from smallpox.
In 1758.
Just a few months after becoming president.
Like a reminder.
Of how fragile life is.
Yeah.
Even for someone who accomplished so much. We started this deep dive.
Yeah.
With that image of Edwards as the fire and brimstone preacher.
Right.
But we've seen.
There's so much more to him.
He's more complex.
Yeah.
What do you hope people take away from this?
I think there are a few key things.
Okay.
First, his intellectual curiosity.
He never stopped learning.
Never.
He was always asking questions.
Always.
Challenging himself.
That's something we can all learn from, no matter what we're interested in.
Whether it's faith or something else entirely.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to go deep.
Right.
To wrestle with the tough questions.
Not settle for easy answers.
Exactly.
Edwards also shows us
Yeah.
that faith and reason,
They can go together.
they're not opposites.
They complement each other.
He believed in.
Both revelation and experience.
And heart and mind.
Yeah, that's important today.
Especially today.
When we're so divided.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into extremes.
Emotionalism on one side.
Or just cold intellectualism on the other.
Edwards shows us a different way.
A balanced way.
Yeah.
And finally,
yeah.
Edwards' life.
It's about conviction.
He stood by his beliefs.
Even when it was hard.
Even when he lost everything.
He was committed to the truth.
No matter the cost.
That's inspiring.
Especially in a world that feels
so uncertain.
Chaotic, confusing.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that you have to stand alone.
But you're not really alone.
Yeah. If you're standing for what's right.
It is true.
Edwards shows us that.
He does.
It makes you think.
It does.
What would Edwards make of our world today? It's so different from his time.
So much has changed.
Do you think his ideas are still relevant?
That's a great question.
Can we learn from him?
After all these years.
You know, it's amazing to me that we're still talking about Jonathan Edwards today.
I know, it's centuries later.
Why? Why does he matter to us now?
I think it's because his questions are timeless.
They are, aren't they?
They still resonate.
The nature of faith.
Yeah, faith, reason, emotion.
Personal experience.
All those things we're still figuring out.
It's like he was way ahead of his time.
In some ways, yeah.
Tackling the stuff we're still wrestling with.
And what's interesting is he didn't have easy answers.
No.
He recognized the complexities.
The paradoxes.
Yeah.
The tensions.
The messiness of faith.
He wasn't afraid of that.
It makes him feel more real to me. Human. Yeah, not just some figure from the past.
Someone who struggled like we do.
Yeah.
That's why I think
he still speaks to people.
He does, across time. It's those deep human longings, you know.
For meaning.
Meaning.
Purpose. Connection to something bigger.
This guy lost everything, essentially.
He did.
His position, his community.
Exiled.
But he kept going.
He never gave up.
Never stopped writing, thinking, believing.
Remarkable resilience.
His life shows the power of conviction.
Yeah.
How an idea can endure.
Even against all odds.
It's a powerful message.
For us today.
In a world that often feels like it's falling apart.
Okay, so for our listener.
Yeah.
Who wants to learn more about Edwards?
Where should they start?
Well, if they're curious about that sermon.
Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
But to really get them, you got to go deeper.
Religious affections.
That's a big one, right?
It is.
About true conversion.
Really relevant today, actually.
How we think about faith.
And then there's freedom of the will.
Oh, that's a deep dive.
That one's all about human choice.
Responsibility.
Still debated today.
If someone's not ready for those, though, what else would you recommend?
There are some great biographies out there. Accessible introductions to his life and thought.
Easy to find online.
Just search for Jonathan Edwards.
You know, I feel like we've just scratched the surface here.
We have.
But hopefully, we've given people a sense of who Edwards really was.
The man behind the myth.
That brilliant mind.
And that passionate heart.
A man who really shaped
American religious history. It's a legacy of intellectual depth.
Spiritual fervor.
And that unwavering conviction.
It's inspiring, even centuries later. So, to wrap things up, I'm left thinking, what if we all lived like that?
With that curiosity.
With that passion.
Yeah.
What if we really sought truth?
With our whole selves.
Heart and mind.
Like Edwards did.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep questioning. Keep seeking
the truth.